Peace, peace. You are listening to Amara Connections, where our story and his story reveals the mystery, or as we like to say, my story. I'm your host, Kane, and I'm joined here with
Richard.
and we appreciate you for joining us here at Amara Connections. Today, we have a topic in our current news section, as we always like to bring you something relevant, something that as Richard, keep our ear to the ground. We definitely want to find information that we feel may support people and beneficial to you all as well. So this is why we like to start off with a current event section. And so one thing that I've heard coming through the grapevine amongst the many research and journalists that I come to find is that there is a international bird flu summit coming up. They have preparedness in birds and cattle. So I guess they want to prepare the birds and the cattle somehow, probably vaccinate them. If I get if I had to give my opinion, I can guess they're talking about vaccination. We got prevention and recovery, detection and response. And this all comes from the Bird Flu Summit International. See, the conference is on October 2nd and 3rd, and the workshop is on the 4th. This is the website. You just type it in, birdflusummit.com. Here's the conference brochure right here. So this is what we're looking at right here, the conference brochure. And so if anyone is familiar with Event 201, because this is sounding straight, again, we know this is an election year. Yes, we know this is an election year. And every election year, there just seems to be something weird that happens. Today is the July the 14th. For those who don't know, I'll go to that after this. And so every election year, there's just some election drama or cause in the world that gets people really, stirred up to want to go vote, to want to go do things. And so, and again, so if you remember, for those who do remember Event 201, it is a tabletop exercise, right? With the World Economic Forum, that was John Hopkins. And again, in October, Richard, this is another one in October. They love having these things right before the election. October is a month before the election year. They just love, last year they did it. I mean, 2019, you see they had one in October. So I don't know if it's something with the political calendar that just makes all these people want to do these things in October. But right before the election starts is just, a little strange,
Yeah, and it couldn't be so esoterical as to do it on equinox, the time of the equinox, or close to the equinox, which is September. It couldn't be.
That's how I mean, yeah, that is something else that can consider election. Just a little recap on Event 201, 3.5 pandemic tabletop exercise that simulated a series of dramatic scenarios based on facilitated discussions confronting true to life dilemmas associated with the response to hypothetical but scientifically plausible pandemic. And so, again, and now this one here is not seeming like a tabletop exercise. Let me go to the about section maybe. But it's not necessarily seeming like a tabletop exercise, more so than maybe this is something they're trying to prepare for. I'm not sure, because at least in the John Hopkins, they're saying that it is an exercise. Let's see. Registration fee, or you have to pay discount? What are the forms? I'm just trying to see if they have any questions related to say about. Welcome to the International Bird Flu Summit, where we address the pressing concerns surrounding the recent developments. Okay, so yeah, they're talking about the recent developments in avian influenza versus the tabletop exercise, which is saying that they're at least trying to just do some game planning in case this happens. So this one is more so saying that we're simulating a series of dramatic scenarios where the bird flu summit is actually saying, we're addressing the pressing concerns surrounding the recent developments. So clearly something them off to make them want to have this summit. And so that is one thing I just want to point out as well. That was, I guess, a difference in inception. So we go down and we see we have the breakout sessions. Welcome to the International Bird Flu Summit, where we address the pressing concerns about the recent developments in influenza with the emergency of a highly virulent strain of bird flu affecting both cattle and humans. It is imperative that we come together to discuss preparedness, response, strategies, and the future implications of this evolving situation. So I can guarantee you, I don't want to say guarantee because that's a high state. I think it's a high probability we will see something with this bird influenza thing later this year, probably during election times, probably in the winter season. If it doesn't happen, I'll be happy. They'll just done this just to be prepared. But given the recent past in these exercises that seem to happen before pandemic events, I just want to, I just want to be more prepared than maybe we were last time, maybe than I was last time. So, and we have the chance to do that, and this is important. So I just want to highlight a few things I saw in this. We have mass fatality management planning. Develop and maintain plans, procedures, programs, and systems. Develop and implement training and exercise programs. Direct fatality. Thinking this is Mortal Kombat. Direct fatality management tactical operations. Activate fatality management operations. Conduct morgue operations. That's the first one. I mean, maybe they could have put that one on the bottom or something, but they want to get that one out the way immediately. I guess the mass fatality. It's the first breakout session. And see, this is an overview of the topics, including again mass fatality management plan, and then putting that one right at the top.
Yep, because that scary thing, you gotta scare you first.
It's right. I mean, it's like right there at the top. Surveillance and data management, preparing communities, strategies, local partners and participations, delivery of vaccine and antiviral medications. But they're already working on cooking up another vaccine. And there's, where was this? This is what I want to highlight right here as well. Risk communication and community engagement, countering mis and disinformation. All right. Because again, it says, and this is one of the what I want to highlight. Restoring trust in health sectors. Because if we look at the World Economic Forum, rebuilding trust.
Not being trustworthy, just rebuilding trust, your trust, them.
Yes. Very good point. Rebuilding trust. And 2024. This is a key element in the World Economic Forum because clearly after the 2020 pandemic, a lot of skepticism arose versus how it was handled, the things that happened.
How many people were killed?
Oh, what would you say, Richard?
How many people died? I mean, mostly our elders, right?
Right. Yeah. How many people died from it?
from the vaccine.
Yes, I mean, the injuries, we have the microcarditis on the rise. There are a lot of, things that have happened. And so as a response, we can see this is what we get. Rebuilding trust, people, societies, and companies. Face the reality of a world in transformation. In addition to the seemingly endless supply of shocks they are agreeing we're in the precipice of a transformation. This is something that we constantly seeing in these global regimes and globalist think pieces, is that they're talking about transformation. I think this is about trying to get people to adapt to the changes that they may see in the near future that may take them a longer time to adapt to in the past. And so it says, in addition, with the seemingly endless supply of shocks, with the tragic violence of the Middle East being most recent deep structural shifts are clearly afoot, from geo-economic to climate change to artificial intelligence. Given the level of uncertainty in high-risk states, there is a clear need to move past the diagnosis of challenges firmly towards solutions. With trust eroding, so apparently they can tell that trust is eroding, long-term visions may be too abstract to rally around. While merely focusing on responses to current shocks will leave everyone vulnerable to the transformation that they've done some good analysis on this. What is needed are new and upgraded platforms for dialogue, stronger partnerships, agile platforms, policy frameworks, and effective development of technologies that can lead to practical and implementable gains for society across both short-term and strategic horizons. So again, this is just something that I wanted to highlight a point on when we see this restoring trust in health sectors. Definitely seems like a page out of the WEF. And also countering this mis and disinformation. I think this is very what do they call it? 1984 Orwellian think tank style piece. Any information that excludes from the narrative is mis and disinformation. But we found that out with the ivermectin and the hydroxychloroquine, all these other things that we've seen. At first, they were labeled mis and disinformation, but then later down the line, they come to find out, oh, these things are true. So this is just one thing I want to highlight that was just very alarming to me. And so any suggestions that I would have for people would be to stock up on antibiotics, work on getting our immune system together. If we're not exercising, getting some good sunlight, and also whatever foods and dietary changes we may need to make to strengthen our immune system from certain type from the H1N1 bird flu may be also beneficial as well. So dietary means to combat bird flu and supplementary needs, vitamins, antivirals, and those type of things. Having some of those for yourselves, your loved ones, and any food, water, rations you can stock and manage up on. Universe forbid this is another repeat of the 2020 shutdowns and different type of things. You definitely want to have things prepared for yourselves and your family. So those would be things that I could say we can do in the time up until the conference, because I can imagine we will hear something about a major outbreak or something serious closer toward October election time. If we may hear something earlier, but that would be my guess if I had to put my hat in the ring. So anything you want to add to this, Richard?
Yes, I would like to share some information out of the newspaper, The African World, or World African Revolution. So this is a piece by Mama Aquila Sabir, and she talks about the Gates Foundation of Global Terrorism and Destruction of African Life.
Oh, I think I read that.
And it leads into food, right? What we're talking about. Like what Brother Kane was saying, like, you can optimize your immune system by just taking care of yourself. Don't eat that, what do you call that? Flecking foods, right? So here's what she's saying about our friend, like we just love us some Bill and Melissa Gates, don't we? They just shoot that stuff out there on that TV so much that we just in love with it. But here's what she's saying. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is a global terrorist organization. Now, I'm not going to read the whole article because it's long. There's a lot of stuff that this is down. And so I'm going to give you a little bit at a time. Next time we talk, I'm going to give you a little bit more. So I'm just going to read what I've highlighted. So the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is a global terrorist organization for the modern white Christian crusading missionary. The foundation has funded experimental programs in education, reproductive health, genetically engineered food programs, agriculture development, women's and girls empowerment, nutrition and disease, to name a few of their project areas. In many African countries, the foundation seeks to be the authority on the health and wealth of African people. Rockefeller was able to design the curriculum and control medical education in the US, and to guarantee that physicians would place emphasis on prescription drug dependency rather than actively strengthening one's immune system. This focus enabled the pharmaceutical companies to make money. See Nancy Turner Banks' AIDS, Opium, Diamonds, and Empire, the Deadly Virus of International Greed, 2010. So that our present approach to pharmaceuticals and the medical corporate establishment begins with John D. Rockefeller. Bill Gates, working through his foundation, has taken the Kissinger report and John D. Rockefeller's examples globally. Let's examine a few sectors. And one of the sectors is food. And let me just read that food and then I'll be done with this. Last year, I wrote about experimental foodstuffs available in our grocery stores. In quotes, silencing food, TAWV7, 22. Products such as Beyond Meat and Impossible Foods are genetically modified, laboratory developed foods. Beyond Meat and Impossible Foods, plant-based, has a different identity. Plant-based meat contains hemi-protein. Hemi is an iron source that comes from meat. So how can companies use the term plant-based if it isn't an all-plant product? Impossible Food has on its website that its hemi is from genetically modified yeast. The DNA of genetically modified yeast can be altered so it has the same producing genes that cows have. Ironically, Impossible Foods is used by a popular fast food restaurant in the Black vegan community. Cell-based meats, Good Meat, an American company, produces cell-based chicken breast from cultivated animal cells grown in a stainless steel vat. This meat is currently being served in US restaurants. Good Meat is also the maker of Just Egg. Just Egg is a plant-based product that duplicates the appearance and taste of a scrambled egg. The ingredients in Just Eggs read that it is made from mung beans. But the company is careful not to label this product vegan. Just Egg, that produces Good Meat, a cell-based meat company, okay, also uses modified cell to make its plant-based product taste like real eggs. So here's another one. Chick-fil-A introduced introduced to predominantly Black communities, Chick-fil-A recently announced that its chicken was once no antibiotics ever, and will now allow antibiotics. All right, what did they say? Chick-fil-A recently announced that its chicken was once no antibiotics ever, and will now allow antibiotics to be used on their chickens. According to a report published by the National Institute of Health in 2022, Black people had the highest annual total meat consumption. Black people eat significantly more chicken than any other group. Sound like how they clone Tyrone, huh?
Oh yeah, they clone Tyrone. It's in the chicken.
No,
That's it. And I think that's another thing too. You know, a lot of the movies and things kind of can speak into the things that we're going through. And I have Googled Miss Aquila Sabar, if I'm saying her name correctly.
It's S
Right here.
BIR, SBIR. Yeah.
And so this needs to be a picture of the LinkedIn. Just so people can see who this nice warrior sister is. This seems like a Pinterest she has, if that's hers. I'm trying to find it in her social medias just so we can give her some publicity. And so this is, I definitely think this, I've seen her picture, so it definitely does look like her when she was younger. I think it's important. Yeah, and so making sure, and because this is in Atlanta, Georgia as well, and because it's also this paper published in Atlanta, Georgia as well.
Georgia?
Yes.
Oh, cool.
And so we shout out to the sister as well. We appreciate the because I love finding Black people who understand that globalization, the real part that Bill Gates and the World Economic Forum and the World Health Organization plays in the role of globalization, especially when it comes to Black people. I think that is a subject that is not talked about enough. Black people need to talk about that more. And so that is what, and this is definitely a very good segue. I appreciate that, Richard, because this is actually a great segue into today's topic. All right, because we are going to go through a very, very important book. Very important. Me and Richard both have this book as well. And it is something that we definitely encourage the people to go through and talk about. Discuss with yourselves, discuss it amongst your people. And so we have some sections, and I want to put, it's called Yurugu, an African-centered critique of a European cultural thought and behavior. And before we go any further, excuse me, let me pull up the woman who wrote this book. You cannot go any further without giving Marimba Ani our credit. All right, so I need everyone to know who this woman is. If you have the means, please purchase this book. The book is online now in PDF form, as you can see. Whatever means you can have to get this book, please get this book. You can see her standing right next to Dr. Frances Prince Wilson. And this is again a very powerful, powerful sister. And she is the author of Yurugu. And so she goes through, let me see, so we can just read more about her very quickly, so everyone can understand. We have Wiki. All right, let's see. Let's see. Donna Richards is an anthropologist and African studies scholar that's known for her work in Yurugu. Let's see, she has a BA from the University of Chicago, holds an MA and PhD in anthropology from the graduate facility of New School University. Right, so this is all the people who like to say, well, who is that? And this is a very scholarly woman, put in a lot of work to write this work that we're going through here. And so that's why I just wanted to say, shout out to this sister, Hotep. Peace. We love you much and we appreciate all the work you've done. Put in. And so that's why I want to make sure you knew who Marimba Ani is, because you're still amongst us in the living, putting in that work currently to this day still. And so this is why I want to say thank you and shout out to you, because this is, again, I think a work that's mandatory for anybody that is serious about understanding the system of the world that we're in. So I would say it's even, even if you're not Black, but definitely for Black people, definitely anyone who's serious about working for their people, doing anything, people, anything for themselves and their own family. They need to read this book, because it will give you the structure of how the foundation of their psyche and development works, that helps you recognize things that they do today and the things they will do in the future. And so this is why I say this is very important. And so I have a few pages and sections that I want to get to. Richard, did you have anything you want to add about Marimba Ani before I?
Oh yeah, the last time I saw that beautiful sister, I'm looking at my book she autographed, March 1st, 1997. Let us have the courage to build a world based on the vision of a united and victorious African future. Marimba Ani.
And that's the thing, that woman is completely apologetically African.
Absolutely.
She just,
Apologetically African.
She makes no qualms about it.
Right.
And I think that's something that needs to be pursued more by the African people, especially by people here in America. Just understanding, and because there's so much of this African, Black, Hebrew, Israelite more thing that I think we do sometimes. It's just easy to get distracted. So that's why I think really centralizing and understanding, like, hey, we need to look past the labels and look at the common thing that we all can unify and talk about. And that's why I even, it's weird when the Moors through this whole "we're not Black" thing, that the Europeans made the term Black, because I'm like, I think we called ourselves Black before then.
Absolutely.
And so, and then it presupposes us on Europeans' definitions,
right?
Like, as we're going off how he defined white or Black. And so it's like, that's another thing that I just kind of find interesting about that. But that being said, you have something to say?
Yeah, following up on what you said, our people have ideologies and theologies that differ and vary. However, we are interested in knowledge, and by doing so, removing barriers.
Right.
That's what we're here to do, remove those barriers.
And this is, and so, and a part of moving those barriers. Okay, all right, so she hits off the very beginning. All right, so right here we can see any discussion of the nature and origin of European epistemology, and let's look up that word, because I'm not gonna lie to you guys, I have a rough definition of what I think epistemology means, but I'm not 100% sure. I'm not even gonna lie to you, because from how it's used in that sentence, it seems like the foundation of how you view reality or nature. That's what it sounds like. But to be 100% with you guys, I'm gonna look it up.
I got it right here.
Oh, what is it, Richard?
The theory of knowledge, especially with regard to its methods, validity, and scope. Epistemology is the investigation of what distinguishes justified belief from opinion.
Okay, wow, that's even better. And I'm just so people who if they didn't catch that, they can see it right here. Well, theory of knowledge, especially in regards to methods, validity, scope, epistemology, definitions of what distinguishes justified belief from its opinion. Very important. Okay, so yes. So now we have that definition out the way for us. Let's go back. And origin of European epistemology must focus on, if not begin with, Plato. And this is very important because Plato, let me just finish. This is not to say that he was not influenced by the pre-Socratic African philosophies that preceded him. This is a reference that she uses. And I think this is very important because when we talk about, when you find out information on the globalist and a lot of people talk about the New World Order and all these type of things, they fail to mention that it's never from an African perspective, very rarely, because this concept of bringing up the New World Order and globalism is something that has come about, I would say, more so in the late 90s, early 2000s. And we see a lot of the real Black Power movement, Steve Coakley, Dr. Francis Cress Welsing, Amos Wilson. A lot of these people are kind of fading out by that time. And there's not really a lot of people replacing them. And so these are the people in the community that would be talking about these things are kind of flowing into different avenues and outlets. And so this, I think, is a very important concept that we want to hold and grasp on, because when we talk about globalization, the New World Order, the global elites, and all these type of things, this is something that really has been affecting Black people a lot longer than this has been affecting anyone else. So we should care more about it than anybody because we've been subjected to it the longest as a people. And so that's one thing that I want to lay out and point out as well too. And to bring the clarity in that actually what people have labeled white supremacy, or what we label white supremacy, but I like Marimba Ani's definition right here better. It is right here on page 20. This is page 29. And I want to highlight it because I know I've seen her talk about it. Or no, actually, my apologies, people. It is in the introduction. So I'm going to skip to the introduction very quickly and highlight what she called this, because she has a lot of information in the book. She has charts that we'll go over in a later time to really dissect. She has definitions. This is a really thorough piece of work that really will give you a thorough understanding of this. And actually, we'll just probably spend just take this whole book and go through it together. The parts that we see are important because this is just too important not to. And here we go right here. The term right here, European, I can't highlight certain part, European intellectual imperialism. This is what I think is a very clear term, which what I think Dr. Francis continues as racism, white supremacy. These are all really what you can consider the New World Order, globalism, all these type of things, because what African people call racism, white supremacy in its proper context. And so but I think when we utilize European intellectual imperialism, that's another thing that gives I think, a clearer message of what's happening, because it's, the intellectual part is really what's important, because it's about putting their ideology in other people who may not look and think like, may not look and think like that. So the more people that they can influence to think like them and look like, who don't look like them and move in their ways, is another form of spreading their influence and power, which I think is important as well, too. Because I think the biggest reason is, I think a lot of time our people who a lot of time I think people can get confused when they hear white supremacy and only think just white people, but having to understand this, that's why it's a system, and understanding how people fit into the system or they not fit into the system. But even, I think this is important, even when people don't fit into the system, they still have an ideology from a European foundation that can still leave out certain parts of the story. And that's another thing that I think we want to work with and conceptualize. So that's another thing that I wanted to point out right here, where she talks about European, well, back in the introduction where it said European intellectual imperialism. That is something I think is very important. And so this does not say, again, that they're not influenced by the African philosophies that preceded him, but Plato seems to have done what Plato seems to have done is to have laid out a rigorously constructed foundation for the repudiation of the symbolic sense and the denial of the cosmic intuitive knowledge. And this is honestly the key to the globalism European ideology. It is to suppress the more symbolic and holistic mindset that comes out of Africa, that comes out of the ancient people. And what's really important that she highlights in this book that I want to get to later is that she talks about how the African has a sense, a tradition, an epistemology of harmony. How can we be in harmony with nature? With the European, based off of his experience and his outcome, has an aspect of how can we control nature. And it's very deep, because when you think about the aspect of looking at one part that must control another part, this is what leads to the thinking of, well, I have to control the people because this is just a view of how he views the greater universe. Well, this part is controlling that part, so I'm just acting in accordance with nature as he sees it. And so this is an important point of understanding the philosophy and why this is important. And understanding, honestly, why Plato is honestly super important, because she said it here. What he done is laid the foundation and for the repudiation of the symbolic sense. And this is really what I would say is the foundation, as she said, for what we call the New World Order today. Plato and the Greeks in Rome laid the foundation for these things, and it's just a continuation of it from this point forward. And so even the people like Jay Dyer, who I've seen recognize aspects of Plato, don't really obviously as a European, doesn't take into account the African input and tradition that has played into that. So I think that's the benefit, that African scholars and people can come to this information and add benefit and value to it. And so this is why I think this is definitely a very important subject for us as African people. And so it is this purpose that we need to trace this development in formative European thought, which was eventually to have had such a devastating effect on the non-technical aspects of the culture. It led to the materialization. This is another very important part. It led to the materialization of the universe as conceived by the European mind, a materialization that complemented and supported the intense psychocultural need for control of the self and others. That is the most important part that I want to highlight. The material, it led to a materialization, because this is something that I think is in opposite aspects to African epistemology. Africans don't think it's only a material universe. They don't think that the material universe isn't there, or they see I don't want to say a space beyond the material universe, because it's like everything is within one, but is more than just the materialistic aspect than what we see. This is something that I think this is the foundation of what we consider the New World Order. It's hiding this type of information in psychology and mindset. This is why when someone who, even a European like Tesla, like I'm trying to think of other good examples besides Nikola Tesla and other people who come across this anti-materialization aspect of the universe or reality or science, they are suppressed even if they're not Black, because it's about this materialization concept that is best reinforced by white culture. And so this is why I'm very keen in figuring out what's the psychology that drives this. And this is why, again, this is a great work. So this is what I think, again, is very key. It led to the materialization of the universe, because this is what leads to transhumanism, right? I can use machines, robots, and other parts to augment myself to better my own evolution, because I'm just a material part. Like, these are the material parts. So the highest form of evolution is being able to control your own creation. And so this is what leads to these type of things. Let's see. Anything else, Richard, anything you wanted to add on this aspect here so far?
No, not little. So I'll wait till I have more time, because there's some stuff that I want to read in the conclusion.
Okay. Let's see. Plato always, okay, let's see. Plato appears to always have been very much himself a social and ideological architect. Very important as well, because I want to highlight this point that even in ancient times, you have social and ideological architects, people who are, this is another word for social engineering, right?
Absolutely.
So this, and again, to the concept that that has always been a part of European culture, to socially engineer the people to do what the leaders want them to do. Again, we have to think about this further than, well, that's just the Greeks. No, this is built into the foundation of the European mind.
Right.
All of the cultures that stem out of this have these foundational core tenets.
Right.
And so this is the biggest thing that leads them to, like, well, we need to colonize this whole place for our own good. We need to Christianize you for your own good, because it's all about control even for the good of something. And again, if you boil it down to the simplest aspects, it's all about control. And so that is one thing that I think, again, I wanted to highlight, because, again, this materialization is something that's very important that we will talk about again. And so another page that I want to go to as well is page 55. Page 55. Right? And at page 55, oops, I'm gonna pass it. All right. Plato has set the stage for important ingredients of European self-image. He sees himself as a critical being, rational, in absolute control. Again, he's in control of himself. Let me see, I don't know if we got to the economy part, but she brings up another point that I think I may be skipping forward to, but this is important as well, because she talks about how the European splits the quote unquote spiritual world and the material world, and sees two important things that I want to point out. Here is this concept of objectification, of viewing something as its own self, void of anything else. And she makes the point, from as I'm understanding it, that that's a because nothing exists like that. Nothing exists void of anything else. So to try to conceptualize something, if you think of it in that way, is illusionary. And That's one point, that he has this illusionary concept of objectivity that's not real. And this makes sense because this is usually why, when if you think in this manner, when you try to implement a plan that hasn't taken into the variables of where you're going to place it into, a bunch of things that you didn't consider start happening because you weren't looking at the other places of how it's going to affect that place. You were only looking at the thing itself, which I was like, very important. This is how you end up being very short-sighted. And also that there's this concept of the mental mind and the space of the mind, the realm and the physical realm. Like there's this split between the two, and that the mental mind controls the physical and material space. And again, it's not that they work in harmony with each other. It's no, the mental controls the physical. And so this is why they lead to the more rational that you become, the more closer to the absolute that you're becoming. So you're becoming more godlike by becoming more rational, more. This is how you get like the architect from the Matrix, just cold, robotic, calculated thinking. It's like this what makes sense. This don't thing because it comes out of this split as well. And so he sees himself as a critical being, rational and absolute control. His mission is to control and rationalize the world. And this he achieves through the illusion of objectivity. Plato himself must have been something like this. Stanley Diamond draws a portrait.
Can I make a point?
Yes, please.
In the Matrix,
yes,
what happens with the woman?
Trinity?
No, the Oracle.
Oh, yes.
What does the Oracle say? He's trying to balance it, and what is she trying to do? She's trying to unbalance it. So he's counting it up and he's making it like 1, 2, 3, 4, and she's trying to undo all that.
Right.
So she's doing the African thing by keeping him from doing the European concept thing globally.
Right. And see, and I think that's the thing too as well. Why this, I think Black people are a key point in this, and it's not because we're Black, it's because of the mentality and the culture that we produce.
Right, which is the opposite of theirs.
Exactly.
Theirs are the opposite of ours.
Right.
They are our, when you take a picture with a Polaroid back in the day, right? You have two pieces. You pull them apart. And one's the photo with the color and the other is the negative.
Right.
Right? So they are like the negative to us. That's why they're kind of like black and white.
Right. They're kind of the opposite of that too.
Right.
And so let's see. This is another point right here as well. The desacralization writ and mode allow the subject to be frozen and refined into a single meaning. Chemetic meta-nature, MW meta-nature, is not of this nature. An ordinary consideration of the Egyptian symbol reduces it to a primary The ordinary consideration of the Egyptian symbol reduces it to a primary, arbitrary, utilitarian, and singular meaning. Whereas in reality, it is a synthesis which requires great iteration for its analysis and a special culture for the esoteric knowledge that it implies. And this is important as well because I think that the European has a hard time conceptualizing this esoteric knowledge. But then on another flip, I think the people who are really the globalist elite studying this, I think in secret, they're really studying the esoteric knowledge. They're doing their best to try to understand it, but from the history that they've been passed down and somewhat tried to keep intact, I think they already knew, like, oh, there's a lot of good stuff here. We need to keep this for ourselves and hide this from the people.
Yeah, and then they do that thing where if you ever watch them dance, right? You know they got no rhythm. They can't dance. They can't get down like that, right? So they got some stuff that they can't get down with. You know, they got songs, plenty of our songs, but they just can't dance.
Right. And so this is that's another thing that I wanted to point out, that there's the difference in how Africans thought and how Europeans think. I don't want to say Africans thought, how Africans think and how Europeans think is different. And so a lot of times when you have European interpretations of African concepts, you can kind of get a misinterpretation of what's really going on. If you don't, again, like you said, if you haven't gone through the great erudition for its analysis and special culture for the esoteric knowledge that it implies. And so that is one of the things that I find very important. And so this leads me, so another thing that I want to bring up as we start to, yes, I have, let me see. Richard, you asked me, can you pull up the one that you wanted to, what page was it on? And then I'll finish off with the last one because it involves the video. So that way we don't have time.
Okay, it's 566. I want to start with that because it's 567, imposing the cultural self is what I want to get to. But read this part to precede that because it's kind of important. So like in the last part of the second paragraph on 566. Page 566.
566. And you said which paragraph?
The end of the third paragraph. It's like 3/4 of the way down.
Yeah, what is it? What does it say?
It starts with there is no aspect of cultural behavior.
Yeah, I see.
Yeah. Oh, so I'm ready?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. All right. So there is no aspect of intercultural behavior in which the Gautama Rojo will allow the European to be taught by majority peoples or to participate as a non-competing equal. So what that means is us. We're the majority peoples. So they're not going to allow us to teach them based on their Gautama Rojo. And Gautama Rojo, the definition for that is the vital force of a culture. Both the Gautama Rojo, the Gautama Wazu and the Gautama Rojo are born out of the Asili, and in turn, affirm it. They should not be thought of as distinct from the Asili, but as its manifestations. So that's what that word Gautama Rojo means. And it gets deeper. She explains it more on another page, but I want to get through this. This is why the idea of Africans seeking equality from Europeans is an apolitical approach to reality. Equally absurd is the attempt to enlighten or change them. The success of the culture is due to the fact that nothing within it ideologically conflicts with the quest for power. So-called European humanism, at best, redirects the power drive by emphasizing its intellectual expressions, and humanitarianism becomes paternalism, a disguised form of European supremacy. The culture itself is designed to be a dehumanizing force. European humanism is a contradiction in terms. So that's preceding the imposing of cultural self, because with that, with the Gautama Rojo of the Europeans, you can understand why imposing the cultural self is just a normal and natural way of those people. So here's an example of European nationalism. A cooperative attitude of unity must eventually take place amongst all Western peoples for the naked purpose of survival. In this age of anti-Westernism, the idea of common brotherhood must take root amongst Americans, Scandinavians, South Africans, Australians, or whatever. So we have identified these as mechanisms by which power and supremacy are maintained. The Asili is imperialistic by definition. The cultural self is spread in order to control others. And by controlling others, the culture spreads itself. European nationalism implies European expansionism. That in turn mandates European imperialism. So European nationalism and European imperialism, the culture is inherently expansionistic. So we have to remember that. It is inherently expansionistic, meaning that all my Anglo-Saxon brother ever wanted was the land next to his land. And then what you get after that? You got other land next to your land, right, and you take that too. And then you still have other land next to that land, and you take that too. That's called the culture is inherently expansionistic. So all wars in which the Europeans have been involved, let me read it from the beginning.
What page are you on?
I'm on page 568.
Okay, yes.
Forms of expression of European cultural nationalism. All cultural statements and styles of behavior that aid this objective. Included in this form of expression are all wars in which the Europeans have been involved, as well as such cultural mechanisms as the rhetorical ethic, right? So then you have theories of white supremacy. This includes a systematic attempt to destroy positive self-images of African and other majority peoples. Theories of European supremacy. Again, this is exemplified by the ideology of progress, the Judeo-Christian formulation, unilinear cultural evolution, etc. All right. All vehicles used to promote theories of white and European supremacy. This is the title of this piece that I'm reading. This will include the use of their popular media to depict European invaders as normally heroic victims of non-European savagery and brutality. Such mechanisms as IQ testing, the dominant thrust of European social theory and European speculative philosophy, the defamation of all African and other majority nationalism, culture, and ethnic identification and attempts at self-definition. So that's why when we talk about the Nguzo Saba, and the Nguzo Saba has things just for that. We will name ourselves, define ourselves, create for ourselves instead of being named, defined, created by others, right? So, European humanism. This is a nationalistic insofar as it tends to promote European forms. The European Utamawazu, a scientific, rational view of the human and the mythology of European intellectual superiority and superficial interculturalism. So there's more, like the liberal ideology, the devaluation of spirit, celebration of material power. Those are subject matters that are covered from Sister Marimba Ani, and does a very good job. I mean, like, I can highlight so much of it. It takes me a long time to read this book because there's so much interesting and valuable stuff in here.
Yes, and I mean, even from here when it says like, I mean, even breaking down a liberal evaluation of spirit, which is one I think is like really important. You know, again, in the celebration of material power, like these are all things that we're not saying didn't happen in African cultures, but it's not the basic foundation of it. That's the biggest part that we have to understand. It's like not, yeah, you have a script and not everyone follows the script. Not everyone, you know, puts out the culture you may align for them, but you have to think about the foundational core tenements of the culture. And so when we even look at these things, it's just something that I think was just really important when we're even talking about these, because these kind of give a highlight, an overview of the whole kind of aspect. So even if you just read this part, you would get a kind of a overarching view of different terms and aspects of it as well. Because she has, again, and see, that's why I think European imperialism, expansionism. You see, and that's why I think that's why I was saying then we see theories of white supremacy, theories of European supremacy. And so those are two, I think that kind of goes with what I was saying earlier of how like European imperialism is the like granddad, and then white supremacy and other forms of supremacy are like the grandchildren, children that are born out of that concept, out of that ideology. And so this is this is very important. And then so this leads us to, we're coming towards the end where I'm going to take us back to page 92. Yes, 92, page 92, 93. And we and I have a video that interestingly enough is, by someone who I think does a good job. Richard Grove at reporting on the New World Order and the global elite in this sense. And so I want to go back to, I have my timestamps here. Go back and because he's talking about Epstein's death here and just some fishy things that are happening with this, but part of this segues and I want to say transpire, but segues into part of our conversation that we were having. So I'm going to let him talk about this while
mysterious death at this juncture in history. No guilt by association, but Epstein's mysterious death at this juncture in history is extremely significant. Attorney General William Barr tells AP that Epstein's suicide was a result, quote, of a perfect storm of screw-ups, end quote. But in the same way that then candidate Donald J. Trump had brought up the case of the mysterious death of former Clinton aide Vincent Foster, calling it, quote, fishy, there are too many outstanding questions about the Epstein death. Like Foster, he is a man who knew too much. Blaming 2 federal prison guards for his suicide cannot be accepted at face value. A quick look into one of Epstein's affiliated groups, the EDGE organization, reveals that, quote, billionaire's dinner, end quote, with photos of Jeff Bezos, owner of Amazon and the Washington Post, Jeffrey Epstein, and many others. Quote, guests have included the leading third culture intellectuals of our time. The leading third culture intellectuals of our time. Very, very interesting phrase. Dining and conversing with the founders of Amazon, AOL, eBay, Facebook, Google.
So we have the intellectuals getting together with a bunch of CEOs, tech CEOs. And so this is again where you have the intellectuals and they get together and pretty much the intellectuals work to help the elite accomplish the goals that they want to do. And so this is where you can see these collaborative efforts of them coming and working together.
With their mass marketing abilities.
To be able to propagandize you, market it to us, and make it sound good to you.
Yeah.
Cool. Microsoft, PayPal, SpaceX, Skype, Twitter, end quote, says the website, quote, it is a remarkable gathering of outstanding minds, people that are rewriting our global future, end quote.
Their global future, not yours, Black people.
Yes, I think that's the thing they want to reshape our future along with theirs. They're not leaving the world out of it. The rest of the world, they have plans for us. It's not that they don't have plans for us because they have to. They always figure out what are we going to do with the herd? How do we manage the other people? So I would say it's not beneficial for us, but they do have a plan for us.
Our job is to not participate.
And that's the thing I think is the most important. How can we find the most effective and beneficial ways to our family and ourselves to not participate?
Take out the pencils and paper and ink pens and paper, start writing letters and form the Pony Express, and we can hand deliver our own stuff. Because if you're doing the digital thing, just seeing what Brother Kane talking about with this global meeting of the minds and technology, anything you put, we used to talk about the phone. Unless you're making your own phone, expect that your phone is tapped. Okay, so we're using their technology to transfer vital information back and forth to one another. That is not what smart people do, because unless you want them to get a hold of your information, you got to find your own way of doing it without using their stuff.
And I think those are part of like solutions, the think tanks, what do we have out here at our disposal that can help utilize and do those type of things. And so I think a lot of things that you'll see it come to this, a lot of the solutions that would help these things are a lot of problem solving or really self-reliance, understanding how to be able to produce the things yourself that you're looking for, so someone else can't provide it for you, and then in providing it for you, try to control you, or at least making sure who's trying to provide it for you is of your community and of someone that has your interest. So even if they want to, it's a business, I want to make some money off of it, but I'm not trying to control and market manipulate you into a global future. You see what I'm saying? And so that's the biggest thing. You want to make sure that the people you are supporting, if they're helping you be self-reliant, aren't feeding you into a system that end up helping take care of your self-reliance away from you.
Right. Absolutely.
Technophiles. This new global order is based on scientism, a philosophy attractive to global elites and which holds that a small group of powerful people will manage the future through technocracy.
And then, hold on, let me go back, because this was very important. I just want to, this is what,
Technophile.
actually, this is what I need to do. Make this that size. I need to get this over here. Okay, so yes. And so this is important.
This new global order is based on scientism, a philosophy attractive to global elites and
okay, so it says this new global order is based on scientism. And now let me read you what our grand sister said on page 2. I mean, excuse me, not page 2, page 92. She says, all right, William Abram, in the minds of Africa, suggests there are two main veins of human nature. There is the essentialist view and the scientific view, right? And if I had to just overlay a culture, I would say the African is more essentialist, right? And he explains and will define essentialist. And the European culture is more scientific, right? Only science can explain it. And so whatever tools and matter and measure can explain it is what they utilize. And let's go into this difference here. It says, the essentialist view that, let me start and make sure I get the whole thing. There are two views to help provide the philosophical and ideological basis of two corresponding different types of culture. The essentialist view that there is a constant element in man, which is irreducible. I mean, people say spirit, soul, ether, all these terms that we're still trying to identify and quantify. And I think trying to identify and quantify the irreducible is part of like the scientific mindset in a sense. It's like, well, and so I think that is where a lot of the struggle comes in, because now you kind of have two, I won't say conflicting ideologies, but in a sense that compete and that are trying to make sense of one another. Let's see, corresponding. The essentialist view is that there is a constant element in man which is irreducible in the essence of being a man. African civilization believes is essentialist in inspiration. In the scientific view, human nature can be altered, changed, The human can be resolved into elements that mean broken down into just parts. It is possible to predict and control human reaction. What does this sound like? Control, and remember the basis of what I said earlier. Everything about the European psychology is based off control. This is just, the science just helps him rationalize why he needs to control. And so in this, and even in his science, you see, it's him trying to control other things and not figure out how can I make something in harmony with other things. That's why all of his, scientific projects are kind of out of harmony with nature versus being kind of in harmony with nature. I think it's, and so it says scientific view depends on analysis, de-integration, and then control of selected variables. In this view, it is possible to analyze the human material and elements into elements and then rearrange them accordingly into a desired dominant principle.
Which he's already practiced on.
Right. I mean,
You see the results of it.
oh, you say that again, Richard?
He's already been practicing on it, and we see the results of it from us, turning us into something else.
Right. Okay, let's see. I'll finish this off right here. It says, what are the implications of these distinctions for the construction of cultural models? Abraham characterizes European culture as rationalistic, and Akan culture, which he says is paradigmatic for African.
Pragmatic?
No, that's not pragmatic. Paradigmatic for African civilizations. Which he says is paradigmatic for African civilizations.
That's page 92.
Yes. As metaphysical, and he puts in quotations, essentials. Paradigmatic?
Oh yeah, like paradigmatic.
Right, paradigm, like, yeah, paradigmatic or something. That's what it's, yeah, paradigmatic. It just don't sound like I pronounce it that right. But I'm like, that doesn't say pragmatic.
Yeah.
Play, paradigmatic, yes, like. And so again, it's saying that Akan culture, African civilization as metaphysical, essential. And so this is an important part I want to point out, because when we talk about scientism, and it's not using science, that's not what scientism is when science becomes a religion for you, almost. So when it's the only thing. Yeah, I mean, she explains it, scientism, in the section. I just haven't pulled it out yet. She pretty much even bases like scientism as part of the religion. This is how you get transhumanism. I can use the science to do all these weird things. And so this is what I wanted to use to highlight when, again, I mean, we just read it from Sister Ani, and then you have Europeans who come, so I like to point out, it's like, when we talk about the New World Order, I mean, this is something that everyone talks about. Black people talk about, we just call it different things. Europeans call it the globalism because they don't recognize the tyranny that's being affected on them by their own people. So, but now that it's finally reached their doorstep, they call it the Illuminati. They call it the New World Order. Instead of recognizing this was going on the whole time, it's just now reached us. So they think it's something new that's trying to destroy their civilization, when it's like, no, this is just
your
part,
civilization.
right? This is yours,
Ours.
right? This is your civilization trying to destroy ours, and now that it's trying to build something else, it's trying to destroy you now,
Right.
because it's trying to build something else greater. And so that's what we're going through now. And so this is what I really want to make clear for the Black people, because now that to make it relevant in our today current time is to understand that this is a continuation of an idea, and this is why I love. I mean, you hear right here. He says that this is a scientific idea.
Holds that a
So with all of that, let's go back and just with all that in mind, let's just go back and hear it one more time. Make sure we all have the context.
Facebook, Google site, quote, "It is a remarkable gathering of outstanding minds, people that are rewriting our global future," end quote. Technophiles. This new global order is based on scientism, a philosophy attractive to global elites and which holds that a small group of powerful people will manage the future through technocracy. Some of these people believe in, quote, transhumanism, end quote, the use of science and technology to enhance human mental and physical characteristics, creating a virtual super race of humans. Epstein, for example, quote, planned on using his own semen to impregnate the chosen ones and thus improve the human race, end quote, notes.
They got some magic transhumanism genie thing going on. What, like?
Yeah, we think it only happens in movies.
Right.
This is real life.
This is real life.
But this nut job is doing.
Right. I'm going to save my, look, man. Look.
Quote, Epstein also planned to cryogenically freeze his head and penis so that future science could bring him back to life to live forever, end quote. In this way, Epstein believed that he would personally be resurrected and experience a form of eternal life. So moving to the next section.
So you can go after your little girls.
And this is some crazy resurrection concept thing, because, which is very important. There's this continual concept of resurrection that I think is used to obscure the true concept of like ascendance of the soul. And so as long as they just bastardize it with these fake concepts of transhumanism, Jesus Christ, you don't really get to understand that true form of transcendence, because that's another.
Yeah. What do you go back to? So our ancestors were studying, of course, the planet, and then they start studying the stars out there, and then you have to ask the question, where did all that stuff come from? So that's what I think is the essential part of the conversation, is the essence of the whole universe. Right. Where did it come from?
Right. And that's the thing that I think the European missed, is that he just thinks the universe is a result of just something.
Those hard objects,
right,
that you can see.
And that's what he's like, well, if you control the objects, you control the nature, you get a grasp on the nature, you can then direct the nature. And this is where he leads him into, oh, well, yeah, I have to control you guys, because this is the, and even if he's someone, even if he's not atheistic and he thinks that it's like an essentialist part, he views that part as in control of the material.
Right.
So this is why the Pope is the supreme authority, because he's the one closest to that space. And so that's why the closer, the more rational, the more logical you become in their mind, the closer you're getting to that supreme being, a supreme entity.
Which is dark stuff.
Yes.
Titled Life and Death Among the Elites. While this kind of approach sounds fantastic, the fact is that Epstein, a college dropout, was highly regarded by such elite organizations such as Trilateral Commission and the Council on Foreign Relations and Harvard University. As reported by the Harvard Crimson, quote, he cultivated cozy relationships with top Harvard administrators, including a former university president, end quote, and pledged a $30 million donation to Harvard to fund the university's program for evolutionary dynamics, end quote.
So again, being able to control the evolutionary concept, right? It's just, this is something that, again, it's in the cultural aspect of the European is to control, but now that he has, the more technology that they get, the more control that they're more that they're going to utilize that technology for control. And so this is why we're constantly like, the Black people who realize the European's gonna be tyrannical with the technology. He's gonna use it to control people. That's a conspiracy theory. No one wants to do, especially with the, I think most people in the world would agree that we're in a Western global system, and with a Western system being founded by Europeans, I wouldn't think it would be hard to argue that their mentality is attached to the system. And so this is why we're constantly like, oh yeah, they're gonna use that to control people. No, they're not. Okay, they're gonna use that to control. It may not be initially because they have learned to make people accept the colonization. That's another thing that we skipped over in the book. Another great part. That's another thing that you said, that they've learned to accept the. That's something that Europeans learned early in this culture, like the Roman, Greek times. Like, if we can get the people to accept it and like want the colonization, we'll have to fight them a lot less. So that's what's going on. So it's like, yeah, just because you don't see someone like pointing guns at you and sicking dogs on you to control you, doesn't mean you're not being controlled.
Absolutely. So when commercials come on, hit the mute button. I don't listen to that garbage.
And I think that's just another thing that now we're realizing this control system has went from more overt to more covert in the mind.
Mm-hmm.
That wasn't the end of the quote. Quote, our work is about understanding the past, managing the present, and helping to build the future, it says. And it has a link to the article. Now, that just makes me think of, again, I repeated it last week with the Technopoly by Neil Postman. Orwell's quote. That's what they're basically saying. Understand the past, manage the present, help build the future. They're doing that, and they're hiding some aspects of it. That's an important part of the control, the hidden part. Epstein was accepted into the.
And so, yes, that last part that you just mentioned, understanding the past, manage the present to control the future, very, very, very key. This is again the key part in analysis. That's the clear blueprint of what's going on here. Can't be any simpler made than that. And also, and like you said, there are hidden aspects of this concept, and those are the part that are very important. And these are the things that I think the public are just. I don't even think they're not aware of it. They think it's not real. That's the thing that I can see. If you just didn't think, like you just didn't know, it was like, oh, that's interesting. But like you're like, oh no, that's not real. I'm like, okay, you're on the dangerous end, buddy. Like I can see if you're like, well, tell me more. I need some more information. But to automatically go like, that's not real. It's like, no, you say like the tooth fairy is not real. The shit like that. Like,
well, then you know that they're totally subjugated at that point.
Amen. Yes.
They have been controlled and contained.
And that's just something we want to look out for. So as we wrap up, I have our gonna go to our last part of the section of this video. And yes, we can end up wrapping it up.
J. Trump as president. In the words of the Trilateral Commission, the future of humanity is threatened. The Trilateral Commission Summer 2019 report, titled Democracies Under Stress, reflects the current political thinking of the global elite, who invited Epstein to join their prestigious organizations and attend their dinners. It states, quote, all of this stress is occurring at the same time when Beijing is offering the world what many see as a viable alternative to democracy, end quote. The many is not defined, but speaking for ourselves in terms of the many, these global elites apparently see the United States experiment and in constitutional self-government as less efficient than China's rule by the communist elite. That's where it gets into the social credit system that's coming here.
So two very important thing that I want to talk about when he talks about the global elite, pretty much saying that the American experiment or system is not as efficient for control, global control and managing their system, as the Chinese system. And this is again, this second thing that will be coming to a street near you, the social credit system, which is something that's already being implemented by China. But when he said this reminded me clearly of what Larry Finks has said. Larry Fink is not the founder of BlackRock, but he just manages all the assets. So he's like the CEO and the controller of it, but he's not the manager of BlackRock, but he's just the person that watches over it. But this is what he had to say about this same, when I heard that quote, this is the first thing that popped in my mind.
Uncertainty. Markets don't like uncertainty. Markets like actually totalitarian governments where you have a understanding of what's out there, and obviously the whole dimension is changing now with, as you said, a democratization of countries, and democracies are very messy, as we know in the United States. You have opinions changing back and forth.
And so, yes, that's just something that I just found very just kind of, as soon as he said that quote, that was the first thing that popped into my mind. I said, what? You talking about the Larry Fink quote that he just made, where he says, "Oh yeah, markets," and because when he says markets, I'm thinking of the global elites, right? These are the people who sway and control the market, who corporate leadership. They like totalitarian regimes.
It's much easier.
Make it much easier to be like, I don't gotta worry about you passing this legislation. What company y'all want to be in business? Okay, Sears. Everyone invests in Sears. We're making trillions of dollars. It's not.
That's it.
Right. And so, and so if these are the people that are, and so this is where, and I think this is the biggest thing as well, is that the European is starting to recognize how their own people attack them and destroy them. And this is what's happening to America right now, because it has used its usefulness and has played its part in the global regime. So I'll just lay this out very quickly as we end up. But, and the Greeks and Romans kind of set the architecture and the blueprint. This evolves into the universe, the Catholic Church, which goes and spreads this system, this blueprint, takes the blueprint and goes spread it across Eastern Europe and the rest of the world.
By murder and mayhem.
By murder and mayhem, and along with the Abrahamic traditions, this is already encapsulated in the Abrahamic tradition. So you can think of Judaism, Islam, Christianity, all that tied into this pillaging. That goes on to the east. We get that all the way up until like the 15th, 16th century, the church, crusades and all this crazy. Same system. This system come to America. It's like, all right, we can take this. Oh, there's land over there. They hear land of, over in the West. So then they take this with Christianity, export it over to the West. It becomes America. America and the whole Western, really, this becomes America and the whole Western culture. That is used and then spread it really globally to help get this market a foot into the global regime, because that's what the U.S. petrodollar and the World Bank and all these other institutions have helped do. America has helped usher in the New World Order by organizing all of these nations under the petrodollar and the U.S. world currency and world reserve. So that was a part that America was playing in spreading its imperialism over into the other places. And now that has the eastern section has done what it needs to do, the western section has done what it needs to do. Now they're consolidating that, and this is where you get the Great Reset and this new globalization, which is again like the blueprint. Again, Plato did the blueprint. They're making another, but to take it globally. Now they need to take it globally and to consolidate everything they have under one space. And so this is the blueprint, the spreading of it, global imperialism through a world regime, through America, that turns into the globalization. This is the timeline. And now China in the other end is just being folded into it. They're like, we see what y'all done over here. We can incorporate that into this thing over here. And so this is, but just the regular American is great people. We must fight for America. Just do not see this. They just think America is being attacked because the commies in that traditional left Hungarian dialectic, that we'll go over another time as well. So this is,
they're just waiting to be told who to attack.
Exactly. And so right now, so this is when I heard that statement, that sentiment, that was the first thing that came up when he said, oh, we're supporting the global regimes like China. You mean like Larry Fink said? And so this is what I'm sorry, Richard.
So we're going back to Rome.
Yeah.
Because that's all it's been. All the models have been trying to go back to the Roman things.
Yes, yes, and I'm glad you mentioned that because my whole thing is like, who is driving this, right? Who, is, and again, we already see it's a culture, but if we take mindset, and can crystallize it into people who are keeping it alive, excuse me, we'll be able to find a lot out about this. And so these are kind of an important aspect that I want to go over today to really usher in this whole concept that I want that really, especially Black people. What the Russian world does, everyone needs to get it together. I'm definitely concerned about Black people. It's like getting a grasp and concept of this, and for the people who do grasp and understand these things, being able to conceptualize it better, because that's what we're going to need. We need better ways to conceptualize this and teach it to people, because it's already a very obscure topic. So if we don't have if we're not well read on the subject, or if they're not spending a lot of time with the teachers, or don't have a clear concept on it, it can be hard to make it clear for other people as well. And so this is one thing I want to encourage people who are aware of these things to be more proactive by looking into the future. Get a good analysis of what we see into the future and how to prepare for that, instead of reacting to what we see in the moment now. And so that is one of the biggest things that I want to teach with the people. Richard, do you have anything to?
Yeah, I can hear in my mind people saying things like, "Oh, there you go, talking about white people," or "There you go with the Black thing. We all have red blood. We bleed, blah blah blah." That's what Brother Kane was just explaining to you for this last hour, right? Everything he said was trying to get you away from that idea that you and them are the same. They're not trying to take over. They're not trying to control anything. You're just all living on this one global humanistic society thing. Well, that's the takeover. That's code word for takeover, but we're just not paying attention. And we have already been turned. That's why we don't want to hear what the brother's talking about. We rather just go on back to sleep, but we can't do that. But I would like to read one thing that we were talking about earlier, Kujichagulia, self-determination, that came up earlier. So what we do here is we use in Guzusawa, and in fact, I like to affirm, I will practice and promote any one of the 7 principles, all of them actually. But I just want to read the second principle. Kujichagulia, Kiswahili word meaning self-determination. And it says, self-determination is to define ourselves, name ourselves, create for ourselves, speak for ourselves, instead of being defined, named, created for, and spoken for by others. We have to do that, because when white folks are talking, they're talking to white folks about white folks. We just have to be listening, thinking they're talking about us, talking to us. They're not. We need to be doing the same thing. We need to be talking to us about us. So that's what self-determination will do for you, and get you in that mindset.
And that's definitely, yes, I think that's definitely important. That's why Yurugu, the book we pulled up today, was just a great example of that. An African perspective into the world and the thought culture of what we see today. And so, and that will be able to help make it more clear for us. And so this is a great way to wrap up the finale. So we appreciate you joining us here at Amaral Connections. Again, this is where our story and his story reveals the mystery. Until next time, I'm your host, Kane.
I'm Richard.
And we will see you next time. Peace.